said, Jimmy, what are you going to do when you're not governor anymore? He said, I'm going to run for president. I said, president of what? And he said, president of the United States. And I laughed. And he said, Mother, you might laugh, but that's what I'm going to do.
There are few countries where an obscure peanut farmer can rise to become one of the most powerful men in the world.
I told you I didn't intend to lose.
America is that country.
I, Jimmy Carter.
James Earl Carter Jr. from Georgia is that man.
I will faithfully execute
the office of President of the United States.
The office of President of the United States.
Jimmy Carter's presidency is considered one of the most remarkable ascents in political history. But it was an accomplishment 31 years earlier he cherished the most.
Well, the best thing I ever did was marrying Rosalind. That's the pinnacle of my life. So that's the best thing that happened to me.
Jimmy Carter's life was not defined by his presidency. This former president had a higher calling.
If I had to choose between 4 more years and the Carter Center, I think I would choose the Carter Center.
And through his work at the Carter Center, he made life better for millions of people around the world, a strength Carter found through faith and family.
I think I have been as blessed as any human being in the world with becoming the President of the United States of America and Governor of Georgia and the work at the Carter Center and big and growing family and thousands of friends. So I've had everything's been a blessing for me.
Well, good evening, everyone. I'm Ron Jones with that breaking news report for you tonight. And tonight, the Carter Center confirms with 11 Alive that James Earl Carter Jr. has passed away. Jimmy Carter was the 39th President of the United States, took his final breath surrounded by family and friends in Plains, Georgia, the town where he was born on October 1st, 1924. Jimmy Carter was a loving husband to Rosalind for 77 years and the father of 4. He led the state of Georgia as governor from 1971 to 1975 and as a state senator in the years before that. Then he was elected the 39th President of the United States, serving in the White House from 1977 to 1981. And as you recall, Rosalind died on November 19th, 2023 at 96 years old. In the White House, President Carter was able to mediate peace between 2 longtime enemies in the Middle East. But it's from the Carter Center in Atlanta where he launched some of his most significant achievements, waging peace, fighting diseases, and building hope. Cheryl Preheim has a look back at the life of our 39th president.
Although Plains, Georgia has made its mark as the birthplace and home of Jimmy Carter, the boy who grew up to become president actually spent his formative years in a place even smaller than Plains, 2 miles away in an unincorporated and predominantly black community called Archery.
During the dry season, when we were cultivating crops and planting and cultivating and harvesting, we were extremely busy in the field. And Daddy was a very good taskmaster. He taught me the benefits of hard work.
Daddy was Earl Carter, a larger-than-life farmer who successfully ran a country store in Archery and an agricultural warehouse in downtown Plains. Mama was Lillian Carter, a spirited woman who worked as a small-town nurse. When he graduated from Plains High School, Jimmy Carter went to a community college in nearby Americus, then Georgia Tech. But Earl Carter wanted his son to go to the Naval Academy, and 2 years later, Carter received a wartime appointment. It put Jimmy Carter in U.S. Navy submarines and sent him around the world. He would marry Rosalind Smith, a hometown girl who grew up just a few doors away from the Carter family. A few years later, Carter returned home and entered the world of politics. His first victory was a state Senate seat.
I was able to get a 4-year college approved in Americus, our county seat, and that got me reelected without any opposition. And then I decided to run for the U.S. Congress against a Republican incumbent, Bo Calloway, who was from West Point, and he was an antagonist of mine in many ways. He withdrew from the congressional race and left me with the congressional race won. I decided he wanted to run for governor. I decided to run for governor against Calloway, so I ran for governor in '66 and lost.
And against Lester Maddox.
And against Lester Maddox.
Lester Maddox was a fiery segregationist who didn't get enough votes to win the election, but became governor after the legislature stepped in. Carter went back to Plains and plotted to run for governor again. It was a race that shook the state in 1970. This time, he won.
I say to you quite frankly that the time for racial discrimination is over.
Carter's inauguration speech stunned his listeners, but that speech, as well as his 4 years as governor, gave him a reputation as a new kind of Southern politician.
People were looking for someone that was not from Washington.
Jay Hakes, another early key Carter supporter, was impressed immediately with Carter's command of detail on major issues. Hakes believes it was Carter's status as a Washington outsider and his faith-based ethics that resonated with most voters as he was running for president.
We now have a projected winner in the presidential election. NBC News projects James Earl Carter of the state of Georgia elected the next president of the United States.
When Jimmy Carter brought his good intentions into the White House,
I, Jimmy Carter, do solemnly swear.
he began with an ambitious agenda. President Carter attacked the energy crisis, fuel shortages, and rising prices. He created the Department of Energy. He told us we all must do our part.
All of us must learn to waste less energy.
This was the president who, in March of 1979, engineered the Middle East Peace Treaty, just 6 months after the preliminary agreements were first reached at Camp David, one of the greatest diplomatic achievements in U.S. history.
Carter's involvement was very, very necessary, and this brought peace between Egypt and Israel that has lasted to this day.
Jimmy passed more legislation than any president except Lyndon Johnson since the World War II. Good legislation. We're making friends in the world.
Most presidents, after they're done with office, they're playing golf, they're on the lecture circuit sometimes, they serve on corporate boards. He made it a mission to continue what he thought was important to the world.
And what was important? First, fighting for justice.
The most enjoyable and exciting, challenging things are when we break down those barriers and reach out to others.
The Carter Center, since 1989, has worked with 38 countries to monitor and ensure fairness in nearly 100 democratic elections. On the other side of the planet, guinea worm disease has affected millions. Carter championed its removal, and in 3 decades, the number of cases dropped to dozens. The only other disease eradicated ever, smallpox. And with every cause, Carter aimed big. In 1976, a humble husband and wife in the humble city of Americus, Georgia, founded a humble nonprofit, Habitat for Humanity. The goal? To build houses for those in need. It remained humble until it courted a former president. His approach to Habitat reflected his outlook overall, affecting the world and never forgetting its roots. It is the strength of a global icon, the strength of a man from Plains, Georgia.